spices like Splenda.
Ew.
Cumin.
No, I don't know that I'd pick cumin.
Eye on television. This episode is sponsored by Law & Order. Special Jeff Goldblum.
Stop.
Sneaky snake. She was a sneak. Heather Mills.
Slytherin.
Heather Mills is a Slytherin snaky snake.
I mean, let's be real. Who doesn't know who the Beatles are?
Heather Mills. Spices. Spice. She's 17 and she's mine. Anyway, this is Talking Over Albums number 12, and we're here with my sister Tarah here in Nashville.
Hey.
We're doing Ram today, Paul McCartney's Something album. The first three were like all him, right? Like 1, 2, McCartney 2, Ram.
But Ram was like him, like when he found himself after the Beatles. Like he kind of was just living in the limelight of the Beatles, feeling the pressure, and then with Ram, he just sort of felt like this was him. Am I wrong?
This is still all him doing everything pretty much, right?
It's like a one-man band.
But this one sounds semi-legit, like he was making obvious mistakes on McCartney 1 and 2. 2 is after this, right? They're like weirdly...
Yeah, 2 is after this, because he did 1, then he moved to Scotland and did this like weird, stuff where he was obsessed with farms and his family. Well, it wasn't really weird, it was kind of amazing.
Yeah, but But
are you smelling lavender?
No.
Yes, he is.
But on his first one, there's noticeable mistakes, and he gets off tempo, like with Maybe I'm Amazed, where it's just weirdly off tempo, and because like the live version is the one everyone likes, where they actually has the like the correct tempo. Where is I going with that? I don't know. This episode is sponsored by allergy medication.
It's Claritin. It's not like you're on anything.
You don't mix it with
lavender. Okay, this is...
Okay.
Goodness.
I don't know.
No, so he got this place in Scotland, this farm, with his family, and he set up this recording studio. And it was his thing to be this, like, the most pure album. He just wanted it to be something that was free of agents and music people. And he did this, everything was his own. Like, every instrument that was played, he did. And then there was Linda that came in and did all the, the kind of fill-in and the background. And it was the two of them, and they were just in love on this farm. And it was a work of love. And when he describes Ram, he always describes it as this work of love. And it's not just between he and Linda. It's just when he fell in love with music again, I think.
That's what I was going to say about this one. Yeah, like this and Plastic Ono Band, where it's very much... Well... Plastic Ono Band's a really angry album, but whatever. It still sounds like he's having fun with his anger. so this is
that to John was love, though. Anger was love.
Yeah. So for some reason, Ram took a long time to grow on me. Just Joanna listening to it all the time because I never really gave it a chance. It was like, okay, it's the one with Admiral Halsey, and yeah, it's so much fun. It's just like you can feel the spark there. Where it still has some muscle, because I was reading George Harrison's book, the one he wrote about Sgt. Pepper's, and he was talking about how John and Paul leveled each other out.
I don't know the names, I just know how they...
What was I saying before that? I lost my train of thought.
Where they leveled one another out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, George Martin was talking about how Paul on his own would go too soft, and John would level him out in that degree, and John would just want to do straightforward rock and roll with none of the conceptual stuff, really. And so I feel like on this one, the worst of Paul McCartney is total schmultz, but this is non-Beatles Paul McCartney. This is the best of him, where there's still some muscle to it. And a lot of his stuff... Paul Unrestrained ends up doing the kisses on the bottom thing, which doesn't interest me. But I think this is perfect solo balanced Paul McCartney.
Well, and it's almost like this very edgy McCartney and it's not, so edgy McCartney is kind of an oxymoron, but it really is edgy to where he was out on his own. He decided to do something creative, and it was not his, love song.
Yeah, creative risk taking. That's like big time here.
Well, because he did it himself, and so he didn't feel like he was a slave to the record labels or anything like that. He could just do what he wanted to do, and he had this kind of it wasn't really a rock sound, but it was like a metallic sound that Paul doesn't have typically in his albums. He tries to do like sweet stuff a lot.
Yeah, and he kind of creates a weird subgenre because it's like funk country almost. So even McCartney 1, he sounds a bit lost in the studio where it sounds like one guy by himself. And even though this is still probably all him, it sounds like he actually has a direction as opposed to...
Well, I sort of feel like with McCartney 1, he was trying to be like, this is me and I'm not with the Beatles.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like he had something to prove. With this one, it feels like, okay, so I just went out and I love music again. Mm-hmm. Because he's so musically talented. Like he has amazing vocals. He can play any instrument. And this is the first album where it just feels like I'm just sitting in this homemade studio loving music.
Yeah. Like here's, you have to keep naming what's next. 'Cause you can be these songs.
He loves the ukulele.
Yeah.
A lot. Is this Dear Boy?
And he's the only person who uses it who doesn't annoy me with his ukulele.
My favorite ukulele use, though, is the concert for George. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So when he comes out and with something, he does something, and he starts something with the ukulele and tells the story about...
He always does that.
How, it was... They were just sitting around playing and George loved the ukulele and he started doing something. And then it goes into like the full blown something. That is one of my favorite musical moments, even to this day.
Yeah, I did that at the show I went to.
Where did you see him?
Milwaukee. It was like sentimental. I don't know. I was afraid.
When was
a
it?
few years ago. I don't remember. It was during the Summerfest in Milwaukee. I was afraid he like did this concert tour because he knew he was dying. It was like extremely sentimental and retrospective.
What year was it though?
It was 2015.
Okay. So this was definitely
16,
when I saw him. I saw him the same year, and I thought it was the Death Tour. But no, I did. No, I had the tickets for June. And then it was postponed because he went into the hospital.
Oh, yeah,
so I didn't get to see him until October. And I was like, please don't die. Like, I've already seen you once.
You saw him after.
Right.
I saw him
so I thought it was the Death Tour as well. Go ahead. Finish your story about the ukulele.
Oh, that was it. I'm just saying he did the same thing. So here, yeah. There's subtle things in the mix where it's like, okay, quirky, sentimental. Paul seems to have always loved the old-timey show tunes from his adolescence. Like, he said his dad was in a sort of a big band thing, I think, and he always loved just, old-timey show music. And so here he incorporates, all right, that song just ended, but okay. I don't know why I keep letting the audience know because it gets so condensed. It's not like anyone can actually follow this.
Okay, so let's just skip to the song for 1 second. This is like quintessential Paul. Like this one where it's like, this is Paul. And then you have like the drum beat coming in. And then you have him coming in with his second voice of like, dear boy. There's the echoing.
Yeah, but what I was saying, like this in the last song is he likes the kind of show music, jazz, and, like big band type of novelty music thing. But on this one, he does really clever things with the beat. So you get more of a intricate, like harder driving drum stuff where the background vocals aren't just like it's like on Sgt. Pepper's When I'm 64, where it's just a straight up recreation of old timey background vocals. It's more clever how it goes back and forth in the mix.
Well, I think the thing about the Beatles is that they all had a real reverence for the old time music and the basics, but they built on it really well. And if they were left to their own devices without all of the direction of the production people in the music industry, I mean, with that, they were amazing. But in and of themselves, they were so good at creativity to where they could take the music and mold it into something different. And I think you see individually with Paul and John and whomever, they all had their own interpretations of that music, and it was really, really neat. And I think that's what kind of lends to the magic of the Beatles, is that they could take this music and they all had their own interpretations of this old, very basic music, putting it into one thing, and then kind of letting the record company, figure out what they want to do with that.
So yeah, with the Beatles, like what you're saying, he had the other Beatles and George Martin pulling on him or restraining him in ways he needed to. But on this one, I don't think he quite ascends to those Beatles creative heights, but he's still close. And you just wonder, how did he come up with his own personal restraint for this? Or maybe he's just in such a creative zone or that state of mind where he's willing to go places. He's not just kind of not devolving, but sort of just what's the word? Just kind of going to a default mode of okay, here's what kind of works. So whatever that creative state is, we're just willing to take risks.
Something about Paul McCartney is he's always used what's around him. So like in this one, you just heard a thunderstorm. He is a person, and the Beatles have always been to what's happening around us, and pulling that in, and not saying like we just give up to whatever that is happening around us, but that we pull it in and we become like this organic piece of life and what's happening. And that's what he's doing now. I mean, everything that Paul McCartney does is always organic to whatever his life is at the moment.
Here's your
So we're talking about...
Yeah.
We have to remember that this is a podcast. So we're talking about Brett's girlfriend, who absolutely loves this album because her father gave her this album. She has it on CD in her car. Let's talk about this. She has it on CD in her car, and now she has to smell the lavender that we're passing around.
We're so sorry,
Mr.
Uncle Albert.
Can we talk about how they always have relatives, like weird relatives? I mean, the Uncle Albert and so, I mean,
who was the guy in A Hard Day's Night? The old dude in the train. That was his uncle, right?
Yeah,
Paul's uncle.
It was Paul. It's always Paul's uncle. So I feel like there might be something to that. Like Paul has a weird uncle. Now, this is my favorite song. I love this song so much. The Heart of the Country. I just feel like this is.
Oh, this is Hands Across the Water.
No. Oh, this is the Heart of the Country.
Is next.
Water.
Next.
They did a really cool dance remix
No,
of
this
this.
is Smile Away is what it's called.
Are you listening to something else?
Look.
That's not the right order.
What are you hearing through your headphones right now?
I'm looking at the playlist.
This is Hands Across the Water.
Oh, this is part of Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey. It's all part of this
Right.
suite.
So, that was...
Please. Oh yeah.
The Heart of the Country
But-
is my favorite song from this album.
What I was saying is one of the reasons that I really like this album is because I never got to listen to anything aside from what my parents gave me, and I still have the cassette. My dad mixed it. He mixed some of these songs in with some of the other Beatles songs that I liked to see if I liked it, and I did. So he ended up making me an entire cassette of just this.
That's so cute.
Quirky reinterpretation of the past. Where John was more like the Jabberwocky type of through the looking glass imagery,
Totally.
absurdity, and that's why it just meshed so beautifully later on. And that's
I think that's what makes them so classic is that you really get this like feeling that you've listened to this music before, but at the same time it's so advanced and it's just it's like comfortable. It's like an old comfortable sweater to where you're wearing this and you're just like, I love this. This is great.
getting into a nice rocker. Nobody did this kind of thing really, because you had psychedelia, but that would get into more either overtly playful imagery
Rockabilly.
like Sid Barrett, or really just sort of dark. But this kind of mixture of playful reinterpretation of the past. And that has nothing to do with this song, but whatever. For Admiral Halsey, which I think was a big creative peak.
But I think, like, one thing with the Beatles is that there was an expectation that when they first began, that you do this, you do the Beach Boys thing, that they bring in these bands and you're just doing this thing. And the Beatles playfully, like, tongue-in-cheek, were like, we're going to do this. And they did. And they came in and they, like, wore the suits, they did the hair, but they all had this sense of humor that's like, we know what we're doing, we're just getting to this next level. So once they got there, I think that's why they evolved so quickly, because it's like we're going to do what it takes to get to the popular level. Once we get there, we're going to start doing our thing. And then all of them started doing their thing. They were geniuses in the fact that they played the game the exact way that they were supposed to play the game, and then got to where they were.
Right. I think it's when you don't even have to be that clever. I don't think it's just I think you just kind of reach a screw it point where they were willing to just do songs individually in the studio with themselves, where it's like whatever works. It doesn't need to.
I think you're wrong. I think that you're wrong, because there's so many people who are just going to come in and say, we're just going to do it because we want to be popular. No. The Beatles came in and said, we know how to play the game. We know we're geniuses. And we're going to play it until we can do our own thing. Yeah. They knew that. And so it wasn't a thing where we just want to be popular and we're going to do whatever the studios want. They were doing it for a different reason. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am.
Perhaps.
I'm not wrong. I'm never wrong.
Well, anyway, I'd like to talk about this type of song where he put out like what's Chopa CBBB PPB
what
Choba B, one of his albums. It's called like Choba B C, where it's just all old timey rock covers. Whatever. He has 2 solo albums that it's just all stuff like this, but none of it sounds as good as just the generic. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He's doing just standard rock and roll really well here, and it's basically the same thing. He just has like this extra layer of spice on it, and I can't quite pinpoint it because he does this on other of his solo albums like all the way through, and it's pretty much dull, even though he's basically doing the same thing. And I can't quite pinpoint. Yeah, it's called Choba B CCCP, like Russian.
Russian?
It's not a terrible album.
There's no Russian albums back in the USSR.
Just look up Paul McCartney.
I'm looking.
Choba.
No, I'm looking.
It exists.
My favorite. This is one of my favorite. I feel like this is one of the greatest solo songs. It's just sweet, nice.
Yeah, it's snappy.
Makes me want to plant a garden.
All right, just believe me, it exists. He has an album with a Russian name.
Okay, so we have a Wikipedia this. Ram, Wildlife, Red Rose Speedway, Band on the Run, Venus and Mars, Wings at the Speed of Light, London Town, Back to the Egg.
Back to the
Egg. Oh goodness, let's not even talk about that.
I never heard of it till today. There's one called Thrillington.
Yeah, no, we're not.
When did that come out? Thrillington. It has like a goat in a tuxedo playing a.
It was like violin. 79. 79 for sure.
That's way too many albums.
Okay, then Paul McCartney too, 1980. Tug of War, Pipes of Peace. Give my regards to Broad Street, one of the worst albums ever made, and I love Paul.
I'm editing that out.
So
it does not exist.
Bad.
Yeah, no, I remember. I think you gave it to me, or somebody.
No, I owned it.
Gave me the movie, and it was so boring. It's one of the worst.
One of the worst things ever. Yeah. Press to play. Oh, here it is, 1988. Choba B CCCP. October 31st.
I think the only thing after the mid 80s I like is Off the Ground.
Choba B CCCP, literally back in the USSR again, also known as the Russian album.
But it's all just old time rock, like early rock covers.
Let me look at the track listing. Okay, so it's Kansas City. 20 Flight Rock, Lottie Miss Claudie, Bring It On Home to Me.
Yeah, it's all the stuff the Beatles did really early in their career, like all the covers.
Don't Get Around Much Anymore. That's All Right, Mama.
I just don't get it. I don't like the early days of rock and roll. So I don't.
You're also not Russian.
I know.
I mean, they don't get any music at all. So you'd probably appreciate what you got if you were Russian.
Here's Monkberry Moon Delight.
This is my favorite one, and it's the only one that you ever hear him like get raspy.
We'd like ready to talk about Linda yet?
Oh.
That's why it didn't bother me, because she's pretty sparse in here, but when she is in it, she's very shrieking off to the side. So, she has a very shrill, like yelly voice.
Right. So let's talk about Linda. Love or hate? Love or hate?
She seemed like a nice lady. It's just.
But do you love or hate her on the music? So let's talk about that.
The music.
Joanna.
There's just something about the frequency of her voice.
You're not Joanna. Joanna, love or hate on the music?
I like it because I could identify it as something that I could do okay. Rather than trying to mimic, like, when he's, like, getting all raspy and things. That's something.
Do you love her on the music?
No.
Or... No.
How much was she actually involved?
She played the keyboards.
All right. Well,
stop. At least she has a leg, and she knows who the Beatles were.
Ooh, sick burn. Oh yeah, this is one of Paul's great vocal performances. Where he's got the growl going.
See,
he hadn't really done that
great,
since.
But to me, I think it's contrived. Like when he's trying to do this stuff, like this is me. I'm being really edgy. It feels like that to me. You like it?
It fits. Contrived isn't always bad, and you're just putting on an affectation to give it an effect.
Maybe.
But like this in the last song, he never really deviated that much from same basic formula, but here he's had a great sense of timing, and he knew how to build and when to come back, like dynamics, like actual song dynamics, because you get into stuff like on Red Rose Speedway with Wings, where it's just so schmultzy, and there's no energy to it or dynamics. It's the worst of the 70s, where it's just a big, thick pool of schmultz.
Well, I feel like Paul, without having someone to balance him out, like a really edgy person, he doesn't do well. And he's
Michael
a
Jackson.
genius. Well, no, but that was the thing, is that I think Paul recognizes that, which is why he's paired up with Michael Jackson, Kanye West. I mean, that's why. Because he recognizes, like, here's my songwriting strength, here's my weakness, and so I need that edgier person. And I think he's super self-aware.
Yeah. It's like, Michael, can you help me be edgy? Sure.
Ebony and ivory.
Can you help me Shimon?
Shimone.
That'd be cool if Michael Jackson was like teaching him how to grab his crotch.
Okay, but Michael Jackson, listen, did he buy all of Paul McCartney's...
I think he bought his soul. He bought Paul McCartney's
he bought his soul. But so before he performed with him. So he bought the whole thing. And I feel like it was that thing where Paul
was part of the contract. He's like, you have to do some songs with me too.
So I a little bit feel like Paul was saying, oh, so maybe I'll get this back if I just do these few songs with Michael Jackson. And Michael's like, no.
What, like he's holding him hostage or something?
You're in my zoo now.
Like he was just holding Paul McCartney's music hostage until he worked with him?
He wanted to put him in a cage. And then Paul was like, I'm out.
You wanted to put him in an exhibit at Neverland Ranch?
Yeah, I think that's it. I feel like he maybe like created a Scottish farm for him. It was like, you can live here. Don't you like it?
He's like, I'm going to have your whole farm transferred to Southern California and put on the Neverland Ranch
is that
property.
Where Neverland is in Southern California?
It's like it's like
is?
north of LA, I think.
Who lives there now?
I think it's just a museum.
Can you still go there? Or is Monkeys there?
Well, they opened Prince's Paisley Park up to...
His kids might stay.
Yeah.
He's got
Blanket?
Paris.
Paris? No, Paris is like out doing things. I don't know where Blanket
Which
is.
song is this? See, here
Hold on.
Linda's vocals are too pronounced. This is where it starts to take a dip for me.
Why is it taking...
Corona doesn't make a good filler bell.
Maybe my fancy boy New England
Nope.
IPA. Yes, it does.
Just have to have a filler huff.
He's sniffing lavender.
There are no...
Is this...
Yeah.
This isn't Eat at Home, is it?
I don't know what it is. Like, I'm very hypersensitive to frequencies and tones of voice. Like, there's something weirdly... Her voice exists on this alternate tone...
Okay, so here's the thing about Linda. Like, I think she was adorable, and I think she was perfect for Paul. Absolutely perfect. But I think he wanted to pull everyone into his zone of music. And where she was just, like, creative, and, I mean, her photography was outstanding. She has some of the best rock memorabilia photography. I mean, it's so good. And then her kids with the fashion and how she was just quirky. That's great. But I think Paul's a little vulnerable to...
You're saying he probably roped her in to do things that she didn't want to do?
I feel a little bit that way. I mean, because then, like, after her, the horrible person, that he married is like, I don't even know who the Beatles are. Yeah, okay. Anyone believes that. I don't know. I feel like he's kind of vulnerable to like, I'm not listening to anything around me, just kind of like do this thing.
It's why him and John were perfect for each other. They both had exact opposite mommy issues.
Yeah, well, John was so skeptical of everything.
Yeah, so they both lost their mothers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
John didn't lose his mother.
She abandoned him, so she didn't die,
whore.
but yeah, she abandoned him.
I think she was a whore. Was she a whore? Yes.
Yes,
she was.
So he was abandoned, and Paul just straight up lost his mother. Mm-hmm. So they both were looking for things in a different way, where John turned him into a cynical, borderline abusive individual, and Paul into maybe an overly trusting individual. I love John Lennon. I know what he did. I don't know. The thing that gives me the benefit of the doubt is that Cynthia Lennon always had good things to say for the most part. So
I don't feel like that's something that helps. I think she was just like,
I know. Here's the next song. Ooh, yeah, man.
Does Julian Lennon have good things to say about him?
I've never heard any interview with him. I don't know.
Well, Sean Lennon kind of like rode the wave of popularity for a while, but he's not any good.
I know that.
And Julian's so he's very sweet, and he's very like into community movement and global movements. He's a really great person.
So he's like one of Bob Marley's 300 kids, all carrying on his work vigilantly.
What I like so much.
Sorry.
Are you even?
I feel like now
sponsored by Corona.
Also, we're on Drunk History.
Have you not listened to any of these?
No, I totally have. But
I need to say something about the actual current song, which whatever it's called, track. From now on, I'm just going to refer to them as the track number.
We don't have to say something about every current
track
song,
10.
do we?
Oh, good, it's almost over. It's track 10. Very intricate lead guitar work. And I always love his bass playing. I want to throw that out there.
He's the only guitar.
Rhythm lead as opposed to him strumming. What I mean. So, yeah, he's playing both, but just a distinction between the types of guitar playing.
So it's kind of amazing to me, though, that he is overlaying everything here. He is playing every instrument. He's, other than Linda, doing her whatever she's doing. But everything is him. He's sitting out there, and it's in a barn. He created this thing in a barn, this recording studio, and he's just
staring out at a ram on his farm, dreaming of this. This is my favorite sheep.
I don't know that that's what he thought, but there was a farm, and it was really cute. And one of my favorite pictures that Linda's ever taken is when he's wearing that little bomber jacket with the like lined fleece, and he has his little baby, and he's holding her. That's the sweetest picture. I love it.
Yeah, there's
and
a lot of good
I love this.
From that.
Stop. This is very Beatlesque. It's such a sweet part.
If only George and John were singing.
I love how we don't include Ringo. Can we talk about how, though, I did see Ringo and his all-star band? I was very skeptical about this. But I got a ticket to Paul and then Ringo. So within 2 weeks of one another, I saw them in concert. And I was super skeptical about Ringo. So good. And people had raved about like his all-star band. It was that good.
He's a professional.
He was so bad. No, he came out and he did this like Photograph, I think is what the song he did. I don't know. But he kept doing like the piece.
She's 17 and she's mine.
Well, he kept doing the peace thing, like peace and love, peace and love. That's what he does constantly. But the band that he put together was phenomenal.
So what was bad? He was bad? The band was great?
He was bad. I mean, everything that the band did was amazing. But then if he would come out and speak, like he did this bad lounge singer. Oh yeah, he was great on the drum. Yeah. But it was like, and the drummer from Toto was also there. But he was doing this like lounge singer every time he danced.
He's
it was
the whitest
so
man who
bad.
ever lived. But I
don't
love
know
Ringo.
that, but he was very cute and great.
I will defend Ringo as a drummer forever. I know people are like, oh, Paul McCartney, you could shred on the drums better. Like, great,
I don't think
but whatever.
so.
But Ringo fit the Beatles perfectly. Some of his drum fills are the most beautiful, amazing things. And Phil Collins has defended him, so that's enough for me. And in the book...
Lots of people have defended him.
Yeah, I just finished George Martin's book on Sgt. Pepper. And he talks about Ringo's influence in the studio, how it wasn't him just constantly sitting around playing chess, waiting for his drum fills, but that he had a really good ear for music, and he would be able to put in little suggestions here and there that would kind of make a big amount of difference in things. And he was a raging alcoholic.
Well, all the Gaiman loved him. I mean, that's something.
Sorry, Ringo, if you ever listen to this.
Because Ringo's going to listen to our podcast. The Gaiman loved him, though. The Frinch Gaiman.
Who's the French gay man?
French Gaiman.
Oh, I thought they're saying like somebody's name, like Neil Gaiman, like French Gaiman.
Frinch Gaiman loved him.
I mean,
he was like his primary stalker.
I can picture him as being like a gay icon in a different country because it's like a more subtle icon, but I can see it.
Why?
I don't know, because it's Ringo and the flashy rings.
It's his nose.
I don't know.
It's his nose.
It's his nose. It's flashy. It's the last track.
I mean, the nose is flashier than anything else.
No, this is track 11. Oh, this one's only 55 seconds long.
The thing I love most about this album, and nobody really likes this album that I've met other than Joanna, is that it's just like this, he's left the Beatles, and it's just this amazingly organic, like, I love music, I've left the scene, and I love, like, I love the 70s music scene.
But this one sounds fresh, though, because you get kind of that overlap of stuff that still kind of has some 60s innocence and scratchiness to it, or still some of the psychedelic vibe, or you get into like this bloated, overly orchestrated 70s thing. And this album, I would put it in the timeless category. It's like, yeah, it has elements of, it's like, sure, you know where it's coming from, just only because it's so popular, but sonically, it's fresh. It's always
really
fresh
is.
When you listen to it. It doesn't have...
There isn't like a timestamp on it to where it's like, I'm doing this thing because this is the music of the era. It's something that is like, I just love recording music and this is where I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. And, honestly, we had talked about, the different albums we were going to do. Paul Simon's Graceland, that's one of them, to where I feel that it's an album that just feels so fresh when you listen to it, and that it's what I think is that the studios, whomever, managers were saying, like, this is what people want. This is what people want. And the artist broke off and said, this is what I want to do. And so they needed a breath of fresh air. So you have a few of these albums.
Literally, on a farm.
You have a few of these albums where they've broken off from what the studios wanted. They just did their thing. And there's not a lot of them, but this is one of them where you get a true picture of this is like, I'm breathing, I'm doing this thing.
But, yes, I agree. But I think there is part of Paul McCartney that what he truly wanted to do was just write Kisses on the Bottom.
I don't think that's true. I think there's so much of Paul McCartney who just is our brother Alex, who can't help himself, like who just does touchy-feely things. It's just like, this is what I want to do. Like, I mean, there's just goodness to him. There's goodness to Paul, there wasn't to John.
Well, there's.
I mean, there is goodness to John. I'm just saying, though, that, like, there's just, like, this happiness to Paul.
Nobody wants to hear just unbridled sentimentalism, unless maybe it's, like, Dean Martin or... There's an edge to that. So, yeah, you don't want, like, one just complete emotion, and I think he would just yay, sentimentality for its own sake. Like, you gotta spice it up. You gotta spice. And this album has a lot of spices. But, like, I describe music in weird ways, and I just picture, like, lots of spices being thrown around.
At this one?
Spices, like Splenda.
Ew.
Cumin.
No, I don't know that I'd pick cumin. Or Splenda. Splenda's not a spice.
Whatever. If you could make a spice out of, like, ram horns and sheep dung. Spices.
I don't know what I'd imagine about this. I wouldn't imagine any spice in it. I would imagine, like, if Paul just kind of stepped away from everything and just found himself, and he woke up in the morning and was just happy.
Yeah.
And walked out to his recording studio after all this, to where there was pressure. And he walked out, and it was in this extra building, and he just felt happy. And he took his kids. They could be out there. And after he recorded, he would go with his family. Like, because to Paul, family is everything. That's what I imagine in this.
This album does encapsulate pretty much everything about him. I mean, there's some... I think there was a part of Paul that came out when he was working with the Beatles, especially John. There's a different side of him that came out, but I think so for this doesn't capture all of them, because I think that was a part of him. But I think this is like 90% of Paul McCartney.
It really is.
When did this came out in 71?
No, 70. Did I say 74?
I think it was 3 or 4.
Okay, so Plastic Yoko Ono Band came out in 72, 1. So I guess they're kind of far apart. I was going to try to make a direct comparison, but I guess they were a bit far apart. I think they represent, those are their two finest statements, like I said in the beginning, of their personal statements of creative freedom, intent that both... Wait, did Yoko do anything on Plastic Ono Band?
Okay, so let's talk about Yoko.
No, we'll skip her for...
No. It deserves some commentary, because people...
She never hurt anyone.
People are very...
She's fine.
Pissed off about her. I don't particularly like Yoko Ono, but it's not deserved.
No, people just have that fantasy of, if she hadn't spawned from hell, that the Beatles would have happily gone on to make like 100 more albums. They were already on their way out.
There was...
Yeah, anyway. All right, let's talk about crappy covers.
Okay, so it's called... Wait, what's it called? Eye on Television.
This episode is sponsored by Law & Order, Special Jeff Goldblum.
Stop. What's the cover called?
Eye on the Prize.
No, it isn't.
Eye on Us. We're in this together.
No.
Remember?
I sent it to you. You should know. You're the host of this podcast. Eye on...
A couple podcasts ago, we were talking about the Flaming Lips. They did this collaboration with Hannah Montana, doing a cover of Sgt. Pepper's called With a Little Help from My Friends. All right, we haven't rated this album. I would give it
0.
No, Ram. I will give it 8 ram horns out of rams.
What?
I will... 2...
No.
What's his dog's name? Jet. 1 jet divided by 8 ram horns. You can do that calculation. I don't know.
I like the song Jet. Jet.
Yeah, I guess that was about his dog. I don't know.
2 ram horns.
His dog was big on the women's suffragette movement.
We can't give it more than 2 ram horns, because that's all there is.
Like,
are there more than 2 rams?
2 very big ram horns.
If there was 2 rams, there'd be 4. Okay, moving on. So we have this shared vision, which is, I would say, the worst Beatles cover. All right. Well, I'm gonna pick the worst one. No, I'll pick the worst. It's Salt and Pepper. Twist and Shout.
Salt and Pepper did Twist and Shout.
Oh, yes. I think this is kind of what ruined me on this entire tribute. Okay. So bad. So bad.
Your face.
Have you never seen this?
I'll be able to hear what you're saying when I edit this, and then you can mail me I'll mail you a response.
He's talking.
Oh no, it's so bad.
Yeah.
Do you normally sound like Smeagol?
I don't know. I feel like my head's gonna explode. That was truly heinous. People just shouldn't cover the Beatles. I think that's the moral of the story. Let's just make one up.
No.
What's the worst possible cover you could conceive of? I would say Nickelback doing Octopus's Garden, or Creed doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Fallout Boy doing...
Stop.
Fallout Boy doing Help. Bryan Adams doing Every Little Thing I Do it for you, in the style of the Beatles.
No, how would that even happen? You have to pick a Beatles song and do it in the style of Bryan Adams. You can't do it backwards. So it would be, I need somebody.
Frank's not that bad. There's definitely worse options.
Demi Lovato doing Sex and Candy.
Ew. How is that even? That's
Katy
not even
Perry.
related. That's not even related.
Did you...
No, wait, so let's talk about what Paul McCartney did with Kanye West. All right, so what even happened with that?
He met Kanye West and Rihanna. He met them at an award ceremony somewhere, and Kanye West just kidnapped him and took him back to his
Mansion.
Kanye mansion. Or he drugged him, and then he just stuck a microphone in his face and said to say the following lines.
Do you think...
It makes me uncomfortable because there's so many other people he could have dedicated his time to than Kanye.
But Paul McCartney is like notoriously weird about teaming up with the most popular... I mean, what do you think his thing is?
Well, he did.
He teams up with strange... and I originally thought maybe it was the record labels that were kind of orchestrating these things, but I don't think so.
Is this really much of a conversation? Because has he even really collaborated with that many people? Because I can only think of...
Then why did he pick him?
Elvis Costello,
I think that's
Kanye
the
West,
question.
Michael Jackson.
Like, why would you pick him? Because he's terrible.
I'm sure he has. I just can't think of any of them.
He's not even a good
Well,
person.
I think he just likes to collaborate, and then... I mean, Kanye, not only that, did he collaborate with him, but then he's like, I'm not sure who Paul McCartney is. Right. Exactly like your ex-wife, who didn't know who the Beatles were, really.
Seething hatred still coming through. Sneaky snake. She was a sneak. Heather Mills.
Slytherin.
Heather Mills is a Slytherin snaky snake.
I mean, let's be real. Who doesn't know who the Beatles are?
Heather Mills. She came in on her crutches like Tiny Tim at some charity function.
Hello, sir.
Excuse me, Paul McCartney.
I've never heard of the Beatles.
Please may I have another? He's like, okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna fall in love with the first person who doesn't know who my music is.
That would be Paul, too.
I think he's just a dope. There we are, signing off.
All right.
That's what we've learned about Paul McCartney. He's a dopey man who will fall for
Anything.
any con that happens to roll his way.
Poor Paul, we love you.
And that's why he has $330 gajillion.
Yep, we were sure you.
And eternal fame. All right, any last parting words about Ram?
I think it is honestly his best album, post Beatles. That I'll stand by that solidly.
I haven't listened to Band on the Run in a while. I think it gets
I love Band
close.
on the Run, but I feel like this is just like pure Paul. It's
That's
so
true.
good.
So it gets a slight edge because it is all him.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Thanks. That was the final episode of Talking Over Albums.
Final.
Unless I get another subscriber. So if you want to keep it going, hit
You're
that
not done with this.
Hit that
No.
like and subscribe button. Smash it.
No. This isn't the final episode.
Everyone get on your friends' YouTube accounts and just hit subscribe on this channel. Thank you. Goodbye.